Yes. So, let's see. Let me make sure everything is a go here. Looks like I might be having some. Okay, we're okay. All right. Why do I do this first? I've got a surprise for you guys, for my zero audience members. I'm gonna pretend like I'm in a podcast. I'm gonna pretend like I'm in Joe Rogan's podcast. Okay, yeah. All right, Joe. Joe Rogan wants me to talk about the LSD experience that changed my life. So, Joe, I know they can't see you on the screen, even though this is supposed to be a surprise for my audience. They can't hear you, so they don't even really know you're here, but I'm going to go ahead and answer your question anyways. What was the question again, Joe? Yes, we are on the Joe Rogan Experience, yes. Okay, so what was it again? So basically what Joe is asking me is what was the like a hallucinogenic experience that I had that was life changing. Okay. All right. So here we go, Joe. All right. So it was in 1994, I believe. And I had sworn off of LSD. This was, so 1994. I had sworn off of LSD several years prior, like maybe four and a half years prior. I had sworn off of LSD. Because I had seen too much. I had watched LSD destroy a dear friend of mine. And so I knew that there was something wrong with LSD. Whereas before that experience, I thought that LSD was like the cure-all drug. Okay, so I had sworn off it, and then I was living in Eugene, Oregon, with some really cool people that were all deadheads, but they weren't like your typical deadhead, with lice in their hair, in their dreads, and they weren't dirty hippies. They were like the guy that took me to my first Grateful Dead show was a computer science major at the University of Oregon, and he was spearheading an artificial intelligence project, and he was like the lead student of his class. He was so far advanced that they actually had him teaching classes as well. And he was, not only that, he was a very accomplished musician. And I lived with this guy and two or three other guys that were of the same caliber as him. And I'm just this average, like Joe Blow kind of loser, So it was kind of awkward, but they were really cool people, and they were really, really welcoming, and they didn't really care that I was just an average Joe Blow. We used to hang out, in the basement, and they would play fucking Grateful Dead songs all night. We'd all smoke weed, and then they'd play Grateful Dead songs all night. And I was like blown away. I didn't realize the Grateful Dead were that good musicians. And the reason I was able to tell they were good musicians is by observing my friends playing Grateful Dead songs, because like they're playing all these complicated jazz chords and all this shit. And I'm a bass player. I've played bass since I was 15, and I've kind of been an idiot savant when it came to music. The first day my brother gave me my bass guitar, I had already learned how to play Iron Man on the bass, like day one. And then my brother and his friend were all tripping out, and and so they sat me in front of the stereo and told me, just here, listen to this Garage Days Garage Days Revisited tape, and just see if you can play along. And here's Black Sabbath, and here's all these tapes. Just sit in front of the stereo and see if you can play along. So then I learned Paranoid. I'm like learning all these songs, and they're tripping out. Then they take me to like the first rehearsal because my brother and his friend were trying to start a band, and they put on a Queensryche song, and they asked me to, and I'm just like playing right along with this Queensryche song like nobody's business, and they're wondering how does he know this song? Like he's only been playing bass for a month and he can play. How does he know how to play this song? So I've always been kind of an idiot savant with music, and within a year and a half, I'm playing Primus songs and shit, you know. And so I was pretty familiar with the bass guitar. I could I could play almost anything by ear. I mean, up until this point in my life. And so then I'm hanging out with all these guys that know how to play like every Grateful Dead song. And I play bass. So I'm like, shit, this is cool. I'm gonna sit in because I can pick up on songs pretty easy. And I grab the bass and it's like I don't even understand what the fuck is going on here. It was the first time where I'd really been confronted with jazz chords and all this wacky shit like jazz rock, bluegrass fusion, all this insane shit that the Grateful Dead do. And that's when I realized the Grateful Dead are fucking musical geniuses. I can't do this for fucking the life of me. I don't even know where to start. Like, what is this? Why can't I play this music? And so I immediately dropped the bass. Like, dude, I'm this is way beyond my wheelhouse. I just need to sit here and watch and listen. And so, you know, like 3 or 4 nights a week, we'd be down in the basement smoking weed, and they'd be playing all these complex Grateful Dead songs like nobody's business for hours. They just one great. And so that's when I first got familiarized with it. I realized the Grateful Dead are geniuses, but I still didn't understand the Grateful Dead music. I thought I did, but I didn't know that I didn't understand the Grateful Dead. I did, though, understand that the Grateful Dead are musical geniuses. Like they far surpass your average, you know, famous band's music competency. Like they are on a way higher level than your average, you know, band. They're like crazy shit. So that's when I first got introduced to the Grateful Dead, was just by hanging out with them. And then they were always listening to live tapes. They had stacks and stacks of live tapes, so they're always listening to, you know, live shows from the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s or 80s and shit. So I'm just like this Grateful Dead overload living in this house with these guys in Eugene, Oregon. And then one day out of the blue, the computer science major guy asked me if I want to go to a Grateful Dead show. Now, mind you, I've been a metalhead all my life. I've always been a metalhead. But because the Grateful Dead were such accomplished musicians, I couldn't deny how awesome their musicianship is. I just still didn't know that I didn't quite fully understand the Grateful Dead. And so I was like, yeah, I want to go to a show. Fuck yeah. And so he bought my ticket and paid the whole trip. We went out to Seattle to see the show in 1994. And then when we were on the shuttle heading to the amphitheater or whatever, he had some hits of acid. They were the pyramid gel caps, you know. And he offered me to take some LSD for the show. And I got really freaked out, and I'm like, dude, fuck. And I said no at first. And then I just like thought about it, and I was like, yeah, fuck it, you know. So I ended up taking a couple hits of these pyramid gel caps. And so then, you know, then we get to the show, and we're at the show, and by the time we got into the theater, the acid was already starting to kick in. And when I stepped into the arena, you know, it's that one in Seattle, right downtown near the Space Needle, open air theater. It was culture shock. I like walked in, everybody's dancing. The Grateful Dead had already started into the first song. And like everybody's dancing and having a good time. And I'm used to fucking mosh pits and crazy shit, you know. And so it was culture shock to me, and they were all hippied out, and it was like, whoa, this is, I don't know if this is my kind of thing. I don't know. But here I am, and the acid is kicking in, and here I am. And they're playing Shakedown Street, right? And so, anyways, so there's a lot to this story. I mean, the show. So just to summarize, to shorten this down, it was the first like spiritual epiphany I've ever experienced in my life. Like I saw everything, and I have taken a lot of acid in my life before this Grateful Dead show, and but this was way different. Like I saw everything, God and all this shit, like everything, and but it was a gradual process. So the first phase was breaking free from the awkwardness, because I'm a metalhead. I'm used to being at shows where people are moshing in the mosh pit, and there's a lot of aggression and high tension, and I'm surrounded by all these happy people that are dancing. And so it was a big adjustment to cross that threshold of like being okay with this. But once I got through, at some point I just realized, man, I just got to let go. I just got to allow this experience to happen and stop fighting it. And so then I let go. And then once I let go, I just started enjoying it. And I'm like, yeah, right. And so that was the first phase, was just crossing the threshold of just acceptance, like just accepting this for what it is, instead of trying to, figure it out and this and that. And so that's when I really started enjoying myself, and I started dancing, fucking, right? And then I started experiencing kind of the love, the hippy dippy woo woo love shit. And it was like, this is great, And I started recognizing things going on around me that you wouldn't recognize normally, like energy and auras and shit like this, but it was it was all gradual. And then so, and I was having a good time. I was really having a good time. It's like, this is great. And then what happened is, as I was really comfortable and having a good time, and the acid was kicking in, and I was starting to see some stuff, and it was kind of spiritual things that I was experiencing and witnessing. Then I caught a glimpse of this guy, and he was off. There was something about him that just wasn't right. And so when I took a second look, like, what is this? Why is this not fit in with the thing? And I took a look at what I was, I took a second look, and it was this really old not old hippie. Okay, he's maybe 65 or 60 or something. But you could tell that motherfucker was been to tons of Grateful Dead shows. And this is my first Grateful Dead show. And he was wearing tie-dye pants with a matching tie-dye shirt. And it was ugly. Like, the tie-dye was bright yellow and white and green, bright green. And it was this really ugly tie-dye. And it was matching pants and a matching shirt. And he was like, and he was looking and acting like he was retarded, like fully retarded. And so I was like, what the fuck? And I'm on acid, and that's not what you want to see when you're having a good time on acid. and so, and so I took a couple more double takes, like, what is going on here, right? And that's when I realized that this guy is permafried. Like, he had been to so many shows and eaten so much acid that he was just completely gone, okay? And once I realized that that was the phenomena, I tried to look away. Like, okay, I didn't see this. I'm not going to pay attention, because I've done enough acid to understand, like, how easy it is to go on a bad trip if I'm not careful with what I allow into my mind. And so I'm like, okay, no, I didn't see this. Okay. And so I just tried to act like whatever. I'm just gonna have a good time. Maybe I'll move further away from that area where where the crowd is, where he's at. And but it was too late. The permafried guy had planted the seed in my mind. Okay, and by now I'm starting to reach higher levels of the LSD experience, and it was the shadow had been planted, and so now there's this darkness attached to my experience that I'm trying to avoid. And it just started to grow and grow like a mustard seed. It started to grow and grow, and I started to realize, I started to reflect on why I quit acid. The reason I stopped doing acid is because my friend who I was doing acid with years earlier, I watched him deteriorate and starting to become permafried by eating too much LSD. And I started to remember that's why I quit LSD, is because I don't want to end up like that. And then the fear started to set in. So we'll do part two.